Produced by Kurious Arts.
Tell you what, if you're ready to, let's just get into it.
Yeah.
Lovely. Hello and welcome to a Kurious Konversation, the first in a series of broadcasts on the run-up to this season of debate. My name is Alex Mellor, and I'll be having a chat with my peers about their work in university, the challenges facing my generation coming into the world at work, and, well, just about whatever we get onto. We are Kurious Arts. You can find us on Facebook at Kurious Arts, on Twitter at Kurious Arts, on Instagram at Kurious_Arts, and search us on the internet at www.kuriousarts.com. So, Mr. Adam Brock, welcome to you, my friend.
Hey, thanks very much for having me in.
Oh, first one of the show, so you're taking the podcast virginity sort of thing. So how are you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling kind of nervous, you know, being put on a spot like this, but I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we've got something slightly interesting to say.
Well, and that is what we're about to get onto. So first, before we get onto that, who are you, where are you from, and where did you study?
I'm Adam Brock. I'm born and raised here in Sheffield, and I'm currently studying in Manchester.
Oh, so you're local lad, but then why did you move over to Manchester for uni?
Well, you know, I really enjoyed growing up in Sheffield. I really like it. But once you get out into the wider world slightly, you realise that Sheffield isn't quite as big as you once thought it was when you were about 10 years old.
Don't say that.
And, you know, the bright lights of London aren't really for me, but Manchester, you know, it's still up in the north. It's still what I know, but it's there's a heck of a lot more going on. Yeah. Both in in the kind of music scene that I'm into, and I really enjoyed my experience around the university, and it still felt comfortable. You know, Manchester's not that far away from Sheffield.
Yeah.
I feel nice and comfortable there, but it's also experiencing somewhere slightly more exciting, possibly.
And what did you study at Manchester?
Computer science. I've got a couple of months left, and then I'm home free.
Lovely. So, but we're not here to talk about computer science, are we?
No.
The piece of work that you gave to me, we got to look over, was an essay about Metallica, written all in German.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a departure, isn't it?
Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about that jump. So we go from computer sciences, correct, all the way over to Metallica, but it's in German.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that. What spurred that?
Yeah, of course. Well, I always thought it really cool, the idea of being able to speak a second language, you know, seeing it on TV or in films. And then, of course, you'd meet a couple of people at school from bilingual families. Yeah. And I'd always be really, really jealous of those guys. And it just happened the way school pushed me into it. The German was the one that I sort of fell into, and so I wanted to continue at university. Luckily, my course allows me to study a little bit of German alongside the coding and the binary and such. And this year, our task in German was to we call it a
just make sure you're speaking directly into the mic.
Sorry,
there you go.
We call it a
Spawn.
Dossier piece, and it's all about doing something that you find that you're passionate about, that you can somehow link to German.
Right.
And so I thought a really good way of testing my ability to express myself in German was to talk about something that I'm really passionate about.
And that really comes across in the in the piece of work. So just to clarify, you're at Manchester, you're doing computer sciences, and you're also doing like a secondary course in German?
Yeah, it's like a little module. It's worth about a sixth of the year.
Ooh. That's not nothing.
No, it's not nothing.
Okay, so you told us a little bit about the essay, why it was written, and it's something that's passionate to you. Tell me a bit about the timescale. How long did it take to complete?
So wrote this piece in over about 3 days.
Ooh, show off.
Sort of like, well, but quite threw everything else out the window and quite a few hours a day. You know, 4 or 5 hours a day. At it, because I didn't need to do a whole load of research for it, because it was all in my head. It was more about putting my feelings down on paper than talking about something factual. It's about my experiences. So
not your traditional essay writing environment then?
No. The whole point was just to try and express myself in a foreign language, and the best way I thought I could do that was by talking about something I was really passionate about. And quite often, if you're really passionate about a subject, you've got a lot of the information in your head already. You don't need to go out and find some more. So a lot of the research, to be honest, was just sort of sitting back, closing my eyes, and trying to wind the clock back about 10 years to when the Metallica happened to me.
So that was actually 10 years ago. So how old are you now, just for the listeners?
I'm 22.
22. So you were 12.
12 years old. Yeah.
Some would say far too young to be listening to such violent material. I guess that's onto a good question. What does the music of Metallica mean to you? Because like I say, you start listening to it when you're 12. Those are very formative years, especially for a young man. Yeah. So what sort of... I guess the question would be, would your life been any different if you hadn't heard Metallica?
100%. I don't want to get too melodramatic about this.
No, please.
It's not that I know every syllable of every lyric to every Metallica song ever written. I'm not. I haven't got it tattooed across my chest or across my heart. But Metallica. If it wasn't Metallica, it would have been another band. But it just so happened to be Metallica, where I heard one of these songs, and up until that point in my life, music was pop songs, and it was verse, chorus, chorus. Yeah. Each song was about 3 minutes. Didn't often deal with particularly heavy issues, especially in the mid 2000s. Yeah. You know, some could argue that pop songs have really matured in terms of their lyrics in the last sort of 10 years, but definitely to a 12-year-old at that time, pop songs were all about happy, or they're about love, and it was all very simple. And because of that, you know, as a 12-year-old, not many 12-year-olds are massively into music, but I didn't really care. You know, pop music was just a thing, and that's what music was. Music was pop music. Yeah. And so when Metallica comes in, that completely changes the game. And what it was a video game called Guitar Hero. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I'm sure many of the listeners will be familiar, but if not, it's a video game that comes with a large plastic guitar that you hold in real life. Yep. And it's got a couple of buttons on it, and you sort of pretend to play along with famous songs. I thought this concept was absolutely brilliant. And also because it was very guitar-centric, it had a lot of heavy rock and metal songs as part of the set list for you to help play along with. And a lot of these tunes are quite classic, and again follow the sort of standard verse, chorus that a lot of pop music things do. But of course, delve a little bit deeper into rock and metal. As with any genre, for me, it just happened to be rock and metal. You start to find bands that really break the mold and do something completely different. And so there was a song on this Guitar Hero called One by Metallica. And One is a sort of a 7-minute odyssey of all the different styles of metal you can get. It starts out with some like a haunting acoustic guitar, and I think, I've stumbled onto some kind of classical thing here. You get sort of an electric guitar solo over an acoustic guitar riff, and I'm sort of going, what's going on here? We get a very sort of melancholy verse that seems to be sort of talking about almost the horrors of war. Now, to a 12-year-old, hearing lyrics like this in a song was sort of completely alien, and I was just sort of completely transfixed by what the heck's going on. And then you get to the first chorus, and the absolutely crushing electric guitar and drums comes in. And up until this point in my life, you couldn't have an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar in the same song. That concept is just unreal. You come through this crushing chorus, and then you head back out into this soaring melodic solo over the acoustic guitar again. And just when you think everything can't get any crazier, we build into the end of the song, which the band described as having a shotgun riff, where they strum the low notes incredibly fast in order to sort of mimic a gun and war scenes and violence, and it just builds and builds and builds, and then we get this sort of, to me, it's the craziest guitar solo I'd ever heard at that point in my life, and it's sort of, I think you might describe it as a face melter, and it sounded very much like
I like that term.
Sort of the image, the sort of technological imagery. Imagine sort of Tron Legacy. Oh, I see what you mean. It sounded like
all neon lights.
Yeah, it sounded like neon flashing lights and everything you would stereotypically assume the world to be like in 70 years' time, when all of the scientific experiments we thought would happen came true, and then it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and then suddenly the song just ends, just silence, and you go from 11 out of 10 down to the end, and you sort of just sat back and breathed. And
you say your first exposure to this?
This is my absolute first exposure to any kind of...
But you were playing along to it at the same time? In that as minor capacity as Guitar Hero is? Yeah. You were still playing along to it? You just
press a couple of buttons down and watch the notes come on the screen. But it was almost like an out-of-body experience. I wasn't concentrating on pressing the buttons anymore. Everything was just sort of happening all at once. Wow. And 7 minutes later, which normally is the length of time of about 2 or 3 pop songs, I sit down and take my first breath in about 5 minutes and go, oh my goodness. And again, at the risk of sounding melodramatic. It was just, it was so different to anything I'd ever heard in life at that point. Everything is, you don't really question anything at that age.
No,
everything just sort of
you
happens to
just let
you.
it wash over you.
Music is a thing. All films have a good guy and a bad guy.
Yeah.
All music is quite straightforward. Everything is just sort of, you sort of take everything for granted at that age. And this was the first time in my life I can remember just being utterly confused and amazed at art forms that could sort of buck the trend like this. And of course, as I got older, I saw films that obviously don't subscribe to the standard good guy, bad guy trope. They kind of blur the lines. Yeah. But this was the first, piece of artwork I'd ever seen which really sort of broke the mold and made me step back and go, wow.
So
just open the door.
This is the sort of the moment of awakening.
Yeah, it sounds so melodramatic when we say it like that, but it was sort of a watershed moment for me, and it really directed my life from that point, because then I'm massively into my music these days. I've been playing guitar a very long time, the actual guitar, not a plastic one, but I do have to give Guitar Hero credit for sending me on that path, and it's dictated a lot of the life choices I've made as well, because I've fallen into these kinds of scenes, the metal scene, and punk and pop punk, and these music has become the most important experience to me in my life. I can't imagine any better entertainment than going to see a gig or something. And this and all this love definitely can be brought back to this one moment where I was 12 years old playing with a plastic guitar, and I heard a song that could be so different. It didn't have to. I'm not saying that this song as well is some kind of ethereal thing sent down from the heavens. It could have been any song, but it was won by Metallica. But for me, it was won by Metallica, and secondarily to that, it was Through the Fire and Flames by Dragon Force.
Well, that's right. For those of you, the people that don't know, Through the Fire and Flames, because it was a Guitar Hero World Tour, right?
Legends of Rock.
Legends of Rock, beg your pardon. Well, that was my first Guitar Hero, so when you're talking about these things, completely understand it. But Through the Fire and Flames was the final song, isn't it? Right at the very end.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Through the Fire and Flames, they're just Dragon Force are described as a Nintendo power metal band, in that they play everything at a ridiculous pace. The songs are very long. The lyrics are all sort of Lord of the Rings, medieval Earth kind of imagery, and it's absolutely crazy and insane. But with a song like that, you really can't wrap your mind about it. And although it's really sort of crazy, it is quite one-dimensional. It's all about speed and power and craziness.
I mean, I saw them live at the O2 Academy.
Yeah.
They were great. But I do understand when you talk about it is complete onslaught.
But the point
take it back to Metallica.
But the point being, it was such a departure from everything I'd ever thought music could ever be.
Yeah.
And that Dragon Force song kind of knocked my socks off, but I didn't really understand it. And it was sort of a bit of a novelty.
Would you say that was maybe a bit too much?
It was a novelty. It did one thing really well, which was go really fast and be really crazy, and almost shock the listener. I see. And it certainly shocked me. But what really sort of spoke to me
about what
on a musical level was one. Hearing lyrics like that, I'd really did, for another 5 or 6 years. I really didn't understand the meaning of the lyrics. Now, another 6 years on, I'll be 18, and I've studied a lot of history and developed emotionally, and start to contemplate the idea of what it might like to be in a war zone. You can try and empathise with people that have been in a war zone, but of course you can't unless you've ever been there. But the lyrics start to make sense. At 12 years old, it was all sort of just imagery of guns and violence and blowing things up, which at that age is cool. But you quickly grow up.
Yeah. At least you hope you would.
But it had as a 12-year-old, it was about a really cool topic. But the mixture of the of acoustic guitar melding with the crushing electric in the choruses, and then this final act, as it were, where the vocalist is really quite angry with life and the world. It was just so different. It's so different to anything I'd ever heard before, and it opened my eyes.
You'd say that your perception of the song has changed over time, like it's matured as you have.
Yeah, of course, because when I started to learn to play the real guitar, I appreciated, quite the technical level of proficiency needed to play a song like this. I quite, without being rude, quite a lot of pop songs You don't need a high level proficiency to play them. You might need a high level of talent to write a song that can galvanize a nation. Yes. But in order to actually just play along with your favorite pop tunes, really doesn't require all that high level of skill or practice. Whereas a song so complicated and difficult as this, so you get an appreciation of how hard the artists have had to work to get to be on the top of their game, to be able to just even to come up with something so difficult and then to actually execute it, because your human brain has no limits on the imagination. You can imagine an absolutely insane song, but it might be impossible for you to play. But
so you say that's another strength to one.
Yeah,
it's like it's a full-on showcase of everything the band can do.
Yeah. Because while they do a lot of crash, bash, scary tunes that Christian mothers really don't like, if you played the first minute of this song, which it doesn't have any lyrics, it's all intro. If you played the first minute of this to a Christian mother, they'd probably think it's fantastic. Yeah, play at church as people are walking in.
I'd love to see that. That's my kind of church. So this is all well and good, but I want to question. You wrote an essay about, not just an essay about your experiences with Metallica, and specifically this one song, but you wrote it in German. Yeah. So talk to me. What are some of the challenges of writing in a second language? Especially something like German.
The main challenge for me is idioms. Do you know what I mean by idioms?
I do, but
so for the audience, idioms are things that are sort of turns of phrase that are specific to the language that you're currently speaking.
These are, cross that bridge when we get to it, sort of things.
Yeah. Sort of sayings. Yeah. Not something like Cockney rhyming slang or like raining cats and dogs, but a phrase that has some other meaning but only makes sense in the current language that you're speaking. So cross that bridge when we come to it. And every language has their own idioms. Okay. And you'll find if you sort of concentrate and listen to what you're saying, that you'll use many idioms just in your general speech in life. Mm-hmm. And so if you're trying to get down on paper the thoughts in your head, you'll find yourself using a lot of British idioms. Okay. And these just do not and will not translate directly into a foreign language.
Specifically
German. Yeah. And German will have their own idioms.
Okay. Wow.
There were some really they sound very entertaining to an English speaker, but one of my favourites is Klappe zu, Affe tot, which means close the box, the monkey is dead.
Is this... So... Is that... Let me tell you, is this some sort of take on the... closing the stable door after the horse is bolted sort of thing? That would be my guess to that.
The context they use it in is, very very similar to that, in that don't bother carry on doing what you're currently doing because it's already been ruined. It's already over.
Oh, okay. So, like you say,
but on first listen, it sounds completely ridiculous. Yeah. And a lot of English idioms sound completely ridiculous to German people. And so if you're trying to write an opinion piece, the most difficult thing I think to get across is you have to have such a knowledge of the target language that you're writing in, that you have to be aware of local idioms. So otherwise, what you're saying is going to sound like garbage.
Yeah, and it's not just as simple as writing an essay in English and putting it through Google Translate.
Of course not.
No, you actually have to write in the
target language, because you're just not going to sound authentically German if you're writing in English idioms, and you're not going to be understood. So you could program a computer to learn all of the grammar rules of the German language, all of the weird different verb conjugations, all of the noun rules. You could learn every single part of the grammar, but if you're still writing in an English style with English idioms, you're never going to sound like a native speaker. So to me, the biggest challenge is getting yourself abreast of many German idioms that are useful to your context, and that can only really come from having experience speaking the language a lot, and maybe even visiting the country, because schools and universities will teach you the bones of the skeleton of the language, how sentences are formed, things like that.
Conversational German.
There's too much. You couldn't teach anybody conversational English to a degree where they'll know every single English idiom before they'll ever talk to an English person. It's the same with German. You only get these things by experience, and it's really what makes you sound like a native speaker versus somebody that's just trying to learn the language.
Speaking of experience, how long have you been speaking German? or at least
Oh,
learning
goodness. I mean, there's an argument to say that I still can't speak any German, but
I'm pretty sure the German speakers among us will have that to say.
Well, for people listening, they'll probably understand that I started in school, chose to do the GCSE, also then chose to do the A-level.
Yep.
And then I've completed two separate levels of the Goethe Institute European framework levels, which puts me at, what do they call it? It's called Further German, for anybody interested, and it's level B 2.2 on the Common European Framework for Languages, which means there are 6 levels.
Yep.
Bottom 2 are beginners, medium 2 are intermediate, and then the top 2 are advanced.
Yep.
The top 2 levels being, you can really handle yourself in a German conversation. You're not going to have a problem at all. You're getting near to fluency.
Yeah.
I'm on the upper intermediate level, which should be, I can always make myself understood. I can understand other people. I should be able to watch the news and glean everything from it, read the newspaper, and I should be able to share all of my opinions.
And those are your standards, opinions and newspapers and that sort of
so you
formalized German.
You can be a functioning member of German society without being the most well spoken. I suppose is the goal once you finish intermediate, and so that's where I hope to be in about 3 or 4 months' time. And this essay is part of trying to demonstrate that I've got those skills.
Well, that takes us very nicely on to the next something that I want to ask you about. Now, does the German language allow you to convey any ideas in different ways? Is there an idea? Say, for example, you come across an idea, would you like trying to express it in? You'd rather express it in German than English.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm monolingual. I only speak English. So when people talk about speaking different languages, again, it goes straight over my head. I tried Spanish, and it just wasn't for me. So I can't imagine speaking a whole other separate language. So that's one thing that's always interested me, is that using a different language to express some ideas better than others.
Stereotypes exist for a reason. There's kind of a stereotype of German people over here in England of being very by the book.
No sense of, it's German humour.
Not a lot of sense of humour.
Matter.
Yep, everything is very sort of regimented, and everything is perfectly in its place.
Yep.
You've heard the term German engineering.
Everything
works. Everything is perfectly in its place. And to be honest, the grammar rules of German are pretty regular.
Really?
You can normally be pretty confident if you've been given a verb and a noun. You know exactly where in the sentence that verb and that noun has got to go. Whereas in English, you have a little more freedom of expression.
Just the you want.
Just the order of the words that you put into your sentence.
Yeah.
You can put them in different orders, and people are going to understand what you mean. Whereas there is a specific order of words in German. Exactly. I wouldn't say there are any ideas that you can't convey in English that you can in German, and vice versa. But I suppose you might be predisposed to getting straight to the point speaking German.
I see.
Yeah, everything is as it is. All of the nouns quite often exactly describe the thing that you're talking about. So I'm struggling to think of an example. For example, a pen.
Yeah.
The noun for a pen in German might translate exactly as thing that has ink in that you write with, for example.
Oh, I see. I get what you're saying now.
For example, there was an example in school where in English we might have a very long sentence to say the referee is refereeing in the final of the Football World Cup.
Yeah.
In German, that is one word because you're describing a man, in this case, who is a football referee and also happens to be the referee for the final.
I see.
And that is all shunted together into one word, which describes this person. It's a noun. You're describing a person, and therefore, that is one. That was one example of a really, really long German word.
Dense and getting your ideas across in just such a small amount of syllables, characters.
Another good example is the Game of Thrones books.
Okay.
Currently, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there have been 5 Game of Thrones books published in the UK across 7 volumes. 2 of the books are so long that they've been split across 2. So there are 7 volumes in the UK.
Okay.
In Germany, I believe there are definitely more, is the point of this. I think there are 10. I think there are 10 volumes, but the point being there are definitely more Game of Thrones books in Germany.
So how does that sort of level out? If you can have a whole sentence about a referee at the World Cup, turns into one word.
One word, yeah.
How does it then expand out to being 10 books rather than 7?
Yeah, because the German language is a little bit more verbose.
Okay.
You describe everything exactly, and the way the grammar rules work, you need quite a few more words to describe the same thing in English. If the writer of Game of Thrones is describing a battle scene, and he's saying there's people here who've been decapitated, and there's people over here who have been injured, and the sun's beating down, and blah 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 blah. You need more words on the page physically in German in order to get those same ideas across.
I see.
Just because of the way that the language is formed, and the way the words work. So that is a good example that German can be. Doesn't have to be, but can be a lot more verbose than English and getting across the same ideas.
Oh, lovely.
Three books longer in some cases.
3 books of extra words. There you go. Speaking of German in this sense, has it actually... Because again, people talk about the pros of being bilingual, having extra job opportunities, being able to go to different places, all that sort of stuff. Has it helped you in any tangible ways? Say, for example, even with your computer science degrees.
It's interesting you asked that. It has actually helped me in one very, very tangible way. However, I wouldn't agree that it would tangibly help everybody. When applying for my work placement midway through my degree, there was a tiny little bullet point at the bottom of the desirable skills, and it was can speak German.
Wow!
And it turned out
absolute silver bullet there.
Yeah, this is the job that I ended up getting, and they did very briefly quiz me on being able to speak German in the interview because I said that I could. I just said one sentence about the weather, and they were convinced.
Not very good German speakers.
But the point being that I was part of a. Without going into too much detail, I was part of a team that fixed computers, very large computers, and
Hang on, you can't say that. How big were they? How big were the computers?
Bigger than yours.
Damn it!
Hey. But the main customer that my team were charged with working with, all of the engineers were based in Germany. And they were all German.
There you go then.
Therefore, it was slightly useful to have some smattering of German. So when the engineers came over and visited the UK site to speak with us for a bit, if we were having any problem at all in discussing some of the technical skills, once or twice, I managed to chip in and get an idea across that was holding up the conversation for a few seconds.
Well, because I suppose if you're trying to talk about a very specific case scenario, you're not going to be able to flip open an English to German dictionary and find the specific word for the specific type of computer problem. Yeah, and I never thought that this would actually massively help, but things come up. You never know when you might have to talk to a German person, or German computer engineer of all things. So it has tangibly affected me. However, all of the other jobs that I applied for and was either successful or rejected. None of them asked for German. Not even a little box that says, I'm bilingual, hire me. So on the application, there was space for you to write down. I have a medium level of German, but not too many were interested. That's so it is in my sphere. It is a bit niche. All programming languages are written in Americanized English. Oh, wonderful! So if you're going into coding, which I'm not personally, but if you're going into coding, you can expect German people, French people, Spanish people to at least know all of the Americanized English words that will crop up on a page of code. So it's not really an industry that needs a massive amount of bilingual skills. However, you need to be able to discuss problems with people in whatever language they're comfortable in. And so it has been useful for me so far, and I hope that I get a chance to use it again in my career in the future. But speaking of giving advice to people, I think it's time we broke onto the final topics I want to ask you about, something completely unrelated to all these sorts of things. Well, maybe not too much. What are the challenges that you think are facing the youth of today? And when I say youth of today, I don't mean kids. I mean people of our age, that 20, 18 to X bracket, people leaving university and going into the wider world of work. Is there a gen label for that? I don't. It's Gen X, Gen Y? Gen X, which one are we up to? I got told... We were born before 2000. What does that make us?
pre-millennials.
No, I think we are millennials, actually.
Are we? Oh,
Well, here's
goodness.
the thing. I've been called everything from Gen X to millennials. I mean, my sister's taken to calling me a boomer all the time just because my hair's falling out, just like my dad. So
Well, regardless of
Yeah.
labels, anyone going through university, I guess, is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Or
and
people
it's-
of
and
not
it's the
necessarily
people who
people
are-
at university,
it's
but
people
people
who
of
are
university
leaving,
age,
or people who are leaving university and going on to that next step.
or maybe people just leaving education
Yeah,
and going
absolutely.
out into like So that's that's me in a couple of months.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of time, so I think the most important
we-
thing to talk about
don't
is
worry about
I think the only way really to describe it is an epidemic of mental health issues that people our age are having.
Okay.
And it's not clear whether mental health is just poorer in young people these days and it was better 20, 30 years ago,
Or maybe it just wasn't even spoken about.
people were too concerned about the stigmas attached to actually talk about it 20, 30 years ago. We can't know for sure, unfortunately. But what we do know for sure is that the number of cases of people our age asking for help and admitting that they feel
through the roof.
they're having issues with their mental health just keeps exponentially increasing.
I suppose it's better that it's, I don't want to say out in the forefront, but it's better that it's out and not swept under the rug.
Yeah, you can't get help if you don't tell anybody about
Exactly,
it.
yeah.
So it's good that people are feeling happier and happier to share, but it's just awful that there's awful statistics. I'm not going to quote one now because I don't know them by heart, but it's something. Massive amounts of people our age, 1 in 3 or something, are saying that they're struggling with their mental health, which is just, it's so sad to think about. You're only supposed to have really tough times and responsibilities and such once you finally have left your education and you start having to pay bills and things.
Yeah.
But the people are ending up in this state of mind, before they even have to get to what might be stereotypically considered the tough part of life. And growing up is tough, but it's sad that it has to be.
Yes, that's a very succinct way of putting it.
Yeah, and this year had first-hand experience with a really close friend of mine who really struggled with this, in the worst way, and everyone in my sort of friendship group and I were just taken aback, really, at that so many people we know are being affected through mental health problems like this, and something's got to be done. We've got to get to the root cause of it somehow, because for the fact that the numbers are still increasing, we have all this awareness. We've got great charities involved that are getting more and more funding and helping more and more people, but the numbers of people suffering are still increasing, even though we're supposedly supposed to be improving our service and helping people.
I guess the thing I'd shoot back at you on that one is, well, maybe solving the mental health crisis of our generation is a bit much for the first episode of the podcast, but if you encounter someone, like you say, who had potentially mental health issues of some variety, or there's someone listening to this podcast who may have this, what would be your advice to that person? Like, it can be as big or as small as, like, find your family, tell them that you're going through a tough time.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people feel a lot of people feel very alone. So I've heard 1,000,001 people say this, but it is just the truth that if you can find somebody that you trust well enough to not judge you or put you under any kind of duress, then just tell people.
Yeah.
That is the number one most useful thing. And while it won't actually, get rid of all of your problems, the idea of having it out in the open and other people knowing can be quite scary. But it massively helps, and it puts you on the route to being able to get yourself back in control of your emotions and such. And that's what I'd like to hear people doing, is telling. Whenever I've got problems or something like that, luckily I've never had such a problem that I would class myself as having poor mental health. But problem shared, problem halved is something I massively believe in. But it's not the same for everybody. Some people are really quite anxious when
a lot of people
they feel that a lot of people know that they've got.
You said it yourself. It's reservations about that stigma attached to having poor mental health.
But
to end on a slightly more positive note, you got any good stories coming out of university? No, it doesn't have to be a horror story.
This is PG, right?
Allegedly, yeah. But, you know, it's our podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want with it.
God, you should have asked me to pick one beforehand.
I did. I'm waving my treatment in front of your face now.
There's plenty of stories at university.
Any horror stories? Any, you know, anything at all?
Okay, so a good friend of mine who will remain nameless. Will remain nameless. We're going to call them Terrance.
Okay, Terrence.
Terrance.
Good old Terry.
Terrance. Back in first year, Terrance and the rest of our floor and halls were going out. Unfortunately, I had some kind of tonsillitis, and it was a Monday.
That's a very
convenient
excuse.
It's a double
Adam.
header of why not to go out. I got a lot of stick for not going out that night,
All
but
right.
I ended up out anyway. As you were saying. So Terrance,
good on you.
Terrance and a couple of our mates went out on the Monday night. People from Manchester will know where they ended up on a Monday night. And I was struggling to sleep, staying up, watching YouTube videos. And at about 11:30, got some strange messages from Terrance on Facebook. They were written in the third person.
Well, I am Terrance.
No, in the third person.
Oh,
like,
no.
Your mate is here. He seems a bit out of it. And I was like, So I gave Terrance a call. And
or the person talking about Terrance.
Yeah, I gave Terrance a call. And the person that picked up wasn't Terrance.
Oh, no.
It was some guy quite a thick northern accent. Your mate's here. He's in a bad way. You better come get him. I was bloody heck. It's about, I don't know, it's about midnight. And I was slowly putting my shoes on. I was like, God, I've got to go into town. I've got to find him. I'll message one of my other friends who's there. And we'll try and pin some movement. We'll find where he is.
Yeah.
Guy said he was in a takeaway nearby. And just as I was going out the door, he goes, oh, yeah, and he's covered in blood.
Oh, what?
And I was like,
whoa. You know,
I suddenly,
for a good story,
there's a
right?
happy ending. No, it's not. It's this is misdirection. So I suddenly go from sort of slothfully getting all my clothes on, I get my shoes on. I'm bombing out of the halls complex now, sprinting to the bus stop. I jump on the bus and I'm stood right at the front of the bus, like bobbing up and down nervously. Like I've got to get to this. I've got to get to this takeaway where Terrance was seen last, and find him and figure out what's going on. Yeah. And then my another friend of mine who was coming from the club to the takeaway. You know, we were trying to, whichever way Terrance had walked off, we were trying to find Terrance. I found Terrance outside the Students' Union, which that area of town is absolutely deserted at this time on a Monday. He was just waiting at the bus stop. Yeah. And Terrance's nose had been turned into a pancake. It was absolutely flat against his face.
Oh my word!
And he looked a little like Two-Face from Batman. In the nose had been squished to one direction, and that half of his face was absolutely covered in blood and bruising. What had happened? And the other half of his face was just as handsome as it was when he left.
Good old Terrance.
Good old Terrance. So Two-Face Terrance looks up and he goes, Adam, what are you doing here? And he's sort of swaying around, and he looks incredibly drunk, but it looks like he's got into a fight or something. Yeah. And I sort of go, well, I could take him to the hospital, but I don't know. He's just drunk. They're probably going to look down on him, bringing another drunk person who's got themselves into a fight into a hospital. So I put him on the bus, and my friend who came from the club met up with us and go, oh man, Terrance is in a bad way, isn't he? So we got him on the bus and took him back. And on the short 5-minute bus ride back to the halls, it was very clear that Terrance was maybe drunk, but also massively concussed. Oh, I see. You can tell the difference between when someone's swaying around because they're drunk and when someone's swaying around because their head has been given a really big bash. Yeah. So we I
feel terrible for laughing.
So we get
really funny.
Terrance was fine in the end.
I would hope. Well, so was he? He'd been pancake nosed and he was swaying around. What had actually happened to him?
Yeah, we did a little later.
Go on.
So we got him to the there's sort of like a security who are first aid trained at halls. So we went straight to them. Yeah. And the guy said very clearly, Terrance has
As a concussion.
Has a concussion. You better take him straight. You better take him straight to the hospital.
Yeah.
And he was saying things that really scared. He said, he's probably okay. He's clearly broken his nose as well.
Yeah.
He might be okay to stay here, but you'd feel awful if you didn't take him to hospital and he didn't wake up tomorrow. We were like, well, I guess we're taking him to hospital then, aren't we? And he goes, yes, I think that's probably for the best. It's like, you haven't really given us a choice here, have you? Cheers, Terrance. And at this point, Terrance was still very much out of it, but conscious. I mean, and he thinks...
That's the thing, you just don't go to sleep. Well, listen, Terrance, just don't go to sleep.
Well, we've taken him to security, but he thinks we're taking him to security because he's done something wrong, not because he's injured. And he turns to us, and in a brief snap of clarity, a brief moment of clarity, he looks at us both in the eyes, completely... He suddenly seems sober and normal again. He looks us both in the eyes, and he goes, guys, you've absolutely me here. Yeah. And he just looks so sad. He looks so betrayed that he thought that we'd told on him or something. We dobbed him in. And we felt so awful. And then we had to get into the hospital, which he didn't want to go to.
Yeah.
And quite a comedic scene. We walked slowly towards the taxi that was about 10 feet away.
Yeah.
And he ran in a wide arc around the taxi, trying to get away. But he ended up right in front of us again, almost like a scene out of a cartoon. He ran all the way around the taxi and then ended up in front of us again and then it was sort of a look of defeat on his face. I can't escape. Everywhere I turn, they're there. So all we did was walk 10 feet towards the taxi. He ran all the way around it, and during this run he'd gone from I'm free, I'm going to get away, to there is no escape, I'm going to the hospital. So we got him to the hospital.
This poor lad Terrance, who has his nose bashed in.
Nose bashed in, he's got a concussion, he's really struggling, there's blood all on his nice shirt. We take him up to the desk to check into to A&E. And they ask for his name and I think the mobile number of his relative. Yeah, I think that's standard procedure. And he goes, I said, Terrance, shall I read the number out off your phone for them? And the person on the desk was quite adamant. No, Terrance has got to read the number out. And Terrance goes, okay, it's 073. And
just stops there.
Just stops and then looks quite pleased with himself. And I said, well, clearly Terrance isn't capable of giving you his number. Please, can I give you the number? And the person just said, no, Terrance has got to give me the number.
What?
About 30 seconds of argument later, it was clear that Terrance was not going to be giving this number up. So I gave the number, and then we sat down.
Poor pancake.
And then, unfortunately, we were sort of accidentally shuffled to the back of the queue by the attending nurses.
That can't be anything.
And so we were there about half an hour before he was checked to see if he was in any immediate danger. And they said, he's got a concussion, he's got a broken nose, but he's not in any immediate danger, so sit yourself down, wait your turn, you'll get seen. Yeah, we got to the hospital about 1, and we were seen. We stayed with him.
Well,
we were seen
good on you for doing that.
We were seen at 8 a.m. in the morning.
Oh wait, you were there for 7 hours.
We were all there for 7 hours, and when he finally went in, they apologised profusely and said it does seem like you've been shuffled to the back. And the problem was, by this point, 7 hours of just sat there with nothing to do. Terrance had completely sobered up. The worst.
He's gonna start feeling all of
that.
No.
The worst symptoms of a concussion had kind of faded as well, to the point where he was totally back in control. He was totally sober again. He was just plain old Terrance, and we were all just sat there, just really depressed, because he's clearly he massively improved the situation. So he's just sat there with a broken nose covered in blood, and we're all just sat there just waiting for them to inevitably pop his nose back in, and all the humour was kind of sucked out of the situation. It was good that we knew that he was fine. He'd been checked and he was fine. But all the humour kind of got sucked out of the situation after 7 hours of just sat there. And we'd go half an hour or something not speaking at certain times because we were just so tired. And there wasn't any urgency anymore because he was sober again, and he was fine. And he was fine. He was just talking like a normal person again. And it was we finally
just
saw
with his
him
nose somewhere up his forehead.
Yeah.
So did you ever figure out what had actually happened to him?
Yeah. Well, also, he had to visit the dentist after this as well. He made some teeth. So
really?
while he was concussed, Terrance kept trying to come up with stories for the police, not the policeman, the security guy at Halls, as to why he ended up like this. And he said he got into a fight and he'd been hit from someone that he couldn't see. Someone had sort of come up behind him and then wrapped their fist around and knocked him in the nose.
Yeah.
And turns out his concussed, drunk brain was just making up a story to try and make himself sound less guilty. What in actual fact happened when he told...
Made it all up.
What in actual fact happened was he was incredibly drunk, and while moving from one floor to the next in the club with everyone from halls, he spotted a fight, completely unrelated to any of our friends. Terrance, I'm only 5'7", but Terrance is actually slightly smaller than me.
Oh wow!
So,
oh dear.
So this was a really poor decision on Terrance's part to try and interrupt any kind of fight, even a fight involving small people. He probably wouldn't come off very well. And he goes in the middle of this fight, and to these large drunk lads goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, guys, whoa!"
Suddenly the big man.
And he waded in just at the moment that the bouncers got there as well. Yeah. And because he was in
he's
their area of influence, he
was
chucked out on his ass out of the club for being involved in this fight. So at this point, he's been in a fight, but he's completely unscathed. So he's outside the club. There's nobody with him. He's a bit too drunk to even use his phone properly. He goes, "I'm just going to go back to the bus and go home."
Okay, fair enough.
But he takes a wrong turning. And he goes down a dark alley. And he gets really, really scared. And so he starts running.
Absolutely hammered at this point.
Yeah, absolutely hammered, but he starts running as fast as he could while hammered. And the curb is very high. And just Looney Tunes style, like running off the edge of the cliff, he just sprinted off the edge of a large curb and just because he was too drunk, Terrance didn't put his hands out to stop him. So he just landed nose first into the floor.
It with his face.
Yeah, he ate the floor with his face. And then, got up, dusted himself down, just casually walked into the takeaway, absolutely covered in blood.
Yeah.
Nose gone.
The nose in his forehead.
And that's at the point that we got the call. Well, and we only found this out a few days later.
Well,
but that's one of my favourite.
Yeah. Well, Terrance, wherever you are, we're glad we have a good laugh at your expense.
We're pulling for you, Terrance.
Yeah, we're rooting for you. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
And this has been a curious conversation with Adam Brock. My name's Alex Mellor. You can find our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Kurious Arts, on Twitter at Kurious Arts. At Arts Kurious, beg your pardon. On Instagram at Kurious_art, and just Google us on the internet at www.kurious.art. Thank you very much for coming on, Adam. Tell us a little bit about German and about poor Terrance right there at the end. But like I say, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.